Hi, and welcome to Season 6 of My Words, Our Journey, the podcast. I'm Monty, your host and author. My wife, Becky, has been asking me to do something a little lighter compared to some of our other journeys. So, for her, we're starting a new journey called A Church for Pete. Chapter 1. Pete McDuffie had been in Plum Rose, Tennessee, for less than 2 weeks when the interview appeared in the local paper. The article covered the usual. Pete was from a large city in the middle of Michigan, had worked in New York City for several years, and had moved south to enjoy the weather, relaxed lifestyle, and to start a small business. He looked forward to becoming part of the community, loved the small southern town feel of Plum Rose, and was looking forward to the upcoming high school football season and the local festival quickly approaching. If the interview had ended there, things would have been different over the next several months for Pete and those around him. There were, however, two other questions that were asked at the end of the interview that would keep the small town from being anything but normal. First question: Pete, are you the same Pete McDuffie that won $6 million in the lottery just over a year ago? And second, what is next on your to-do list? The answer to the first had been a reluctant yes, while the answer to the second was keep working on opening the store, and I'd really like to find a good church home. The Plum Rose Tribune had come out every Thursday for the past 28 years and had a religious following, with most reading or at least glancing at every article from front to back, its contents being talked about until the next week's version came out. In a town where winning the Friday night football game or a new menu item at one of the local family-owned restaurants could start a stir, it was no surprise that learning your newest community member was a millionaire was a big news. From the schoolyard to the courthouse and everywhere in between, Pete and his millions were on the top of everyone's must-discuss list. It was rumored that the Fremont family that lived just outside of town had made a small fortune when they sold a successful furniture store somewhere out west, and it was well known that Frank Lancaster had done rather well as the only local doctor. But $6 million? No, there was no one even close to that any of them knew about. In a small town USA, you can't hide that kind of money. This fact alone moved Pete to the top of the news cycle, but add in the fact he was moving here alone, was only in his mid-30s, and from all accounts, a really nice guy. It just made for good conversation. Just short of 300 words, which is all the interview took, was written on Tuesday evening and appeared in that week's edition, delivered early to nearly every yard or porch in town, and it would change things in an otherwise calm and steady Plum Rose. Poor Pete had no idea what was about to come his way. Chapter 2. It was a beautiful morning for a jog. The air was crisp, the morning still dark, and the streets quiet. Exactly what he needed to start his day, Pete thought. One of the things that excited him the most about the move was the new experience of jogging outside. He was used to spending each morning on a treadmill in New York City. Now he had a whole small town and country roads to explore. Pete had never considered himself a runner. No, he was more of a jaunter, if he had to describe his morning workouts. He would never win a race at the pace he kept, but he was good with that. He was in it for the distance over speed, a marathon over a sprint. He had decided today he would be jogging from his doorstep to his soon-to-be storefront. His phone would tell him how far he had gone once he was back, and he'd compare that to the trip he had set on his phone. They should be close, if not exact, but he'd still like to know. So, off he went. The home he had purchased was near the end of a dirt road, a little less than a mile from Route 3, which led into town. Then it would be another 2.5 miles, according to the sign he would just pass shortly after making the left onto Route 3. His road was named Waterfront Way. There was no waterfront, and there was only one way in and out. So the name, he didn't know how it got the name. Maybe somebody had an idea, or maybe somebody just thought they were being funny. If you drove to the end of Waterfront Way Road, you would come upon one more house before the dead end sign. It was a small farmhouse, surrounded by acres of farmland. Some he figured were planted each season, and some he could see were for the cattle that marked the hills. Pete's property was just shy of 2 acres and backed up to the wooded area that to this point he had no idea who owned it. He wasn't a hunter, so he had no use for crossing the property line. He had purposely not purchased a riding mower because he wanted the exercise, so he had bought a gently used push mower from the local hardware store. Guy swore the owner only used it once before he died of a heart attack. Comforting, Pete thought, as he jogged. He would listen to a podcast or one of his many playlists while jogging, but his mind still wandered. Now he wondered if he'd have any energy to mow the lawn later that day. It was early. He wasn't sure what time, but as he passed the church on the right-hand side, he could already see someone was at the property. The man was taking something out of the side door and placing it in a large bin. He assumed it's trashed. Through the music, he could hear whatever was contained in the trash crashing to the bottom of the bin. The gentleman was not trying to be quiet. There was a small sign out front of the modest church building, but it was faded. He didn't wear his glasses when he was jogging, and it had no light to illuminate the sign like most. 3 more homes, lights all out, no activity. He was on the main road, made his left, and began the slight incline that would take him to town. From WW Road to the town limits, he would pass line after line of what he guessed were corn stalks, neatly lined rows, tight up against the next. Only 3 houses sat on this stretch of the road, all set far back off. Each appeared to be old, but very well maintained. There must be good money in farming, he thought. Just as that thought passed, he was shocked to the core by the sound of the horn blasting directly behind him. Clearly, he had wandered past the line, onto the side of the road, and into the lane of the very angry driver. With a wave of apology, Pete moved over, felt to make sure his heart was still in place, and continued on. As the van passed, he noticed it was in need of good cleaning, and the lights were not turned on. If they had been, he would have seen them coming up behind him, and he wouldn't have been venturing in their way. That was his thought, at least. Still his fault. But it did make him feel a certain kind of way as he thought about how long they had laid on the horn. The Prince song Boys and Girls came on his Walkman, and he forgot all about the incident. He was a Prince fan from way back. By the time he reached the doorstep to the bookstore, yep, that was the clever name Pete had come up with, the bookstore, on a quaint downtown Main Street where all the shops had well thought out names. His was as basic could really get. On one side of his store was Latte Lounge, pretty explanatory. On the other side, Silken Treasures, a nice family consignment boutique. He loved his storefront. It had been his dream for years, a dream he had shared with his best friend, Sybil Clark, or CC for short. 2 steps, freshly painted, potted plants, bottom step left, top step right. The clerk at the local hardware garden center said they would be perfect. In the 2 large windows, on each side of the steps, were creative wooden racks of shapes and different sizes. He had had them made by a local retired contractor that had been recommended to him by the waitress at the coffee shop down the street. They had turned out even better than he could have imagined. He served no beverages, snacks, or treats, but you could bring your own and browse the hundreds of new and used books, all genres, and strategically placed would be comfortable seating. He had not hired anyone to help with the store. He was not sure if it'd be necessary. How busy could this little place get? He sat on the step and drank from his water bottle. As a couple of early risers walked by, Pete was sure they were wondering why he was sitting there. Well, he said sarcastically in his head, if you must know, I left the key on the hallway table when I left this morning. So... He took a walk to the end of the street and turned around, deciding he would start jogging again when he got to the other end of the street. By the time he reached the end of the block, 2 business owners had almost tripped over themselves to get to their doors before he passed, just to say good morning. As he stood at the corner, jogging in place, he thought he heard someone yell, "Looking good, Pete!" But when he turned in the direction he thought it came from, all he saw was a tall woman, probably 65, with a wide smile, holding her coffee cup up from Latte Lounge. Nah, couldn't be, he thought, and then went to cross the street. The idea that his jog home would be as uneventful as his way into town, only a short time earlier, was quickly put out of his mind. Vehicle after vehicle making its way into town to start their day honked. Some even rolled down their windows and yelled, "Good morning, Pete. Can't wait till your new store opens, Pete." And some just said things he couldn't make out because they were driving and he was jogging. But everyone seemed to be very friendly, and he was trying to do that nice hand gesture thing as he jogged. Chapter 3. As Pete turned into his driveway, he could hear the sound of the tires on gravel directly behind him. Turning, he saw someone he didn't know exiting the driver's side. At the same time, he noticed a young woman climbing out the passenger seat. Before Pete could say a word, the man approached, arm extended. "Name's Faulkner, Willie Faulkner. This is my oldest daughter, Stephanie. We wanted to come by and officially welcome you to the area. We are neighbors of sorts. My family owns all the land behind your place." Barely taking a breath, he continued, "If you want to expand the place, just say. I'm sure we can give you more than a fair price for such sought-after land. Also, Stephanie, she is born and raised here. She'd be more than happy to show you around town, share with you what she knows, answer any of your questions. Maybe you two should have dinner sometime and plan a day. Wouldn't that be nice, Steph?" "Sure it would. Pete, give her your phone, and she'll add you to her contacts." Pete had to speak. He was afraid the man was going to pass out if he didn't take a full breath. "Willie and Stephanie, thank you so much for stopping by. I think I'm good on land and sightseeing right now. Need to get the store open and all, but I appreciate the offers and look forward to seeing you both around town." Stephanie seemed surprised he hadn't jumped at the chance to spend time with her. After all, she was certainly small-town cute, but she was also probably 10 years younger than he, and didn't look like someone he would have very much in common with. Also, the whole dad setup thing was kind of weird. Willie looked not only surprised, but lost on what to say next, so he slowly started backing up and mumbled as he got back in the truck. That was strange, Pete thought as he stepped onto the porch, picked up the paper, and headed to the fridge for a smart water in his deck chair. It wasn't until he finished the article about the new business owner in town that the morning made sense. Those tripping over themselves to say good morning, the encouragement from almost all passerbyers on the road, and then the father trying to sell his land and give away his eldest daughter. What had he done? Should he have lied? Would anyone have dug deeper? Should he try to clarify? Would that just make things worse? Way too many questions, and certainly no answers at this point. So let's stop there today. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of A Church for Pete, where I've promised my wife no one will be shot, hit with a baseball bat, or put in a barrel. Have a great day.